welcome
Hi.
to another rendition of Cookie Pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm sure you're well aware, it is the holiday season.
Time for gay happy meetings.
Yes. Okay. That was definitely the best phrase to say there.
It's from the song.
That's a little bit redundant, Zach. Gay and
Home
happy are the same
Alone
thing.
2.
Talk to Irving
Lost
Berlin.
in New York. Who wrote this? John Hughes. Yes, John Hughes wrote it.
He did, yeah.
Okay. Directed by Chris Columbus. I'm going to do the Mitchell style intro because it's good.
Wow, okay.
Produced and
I'm inspired.
written by John Hughes. Starring Macaulay Culkin as Kevin. Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern as Harry and Marv. And, some other people as some other characters, but that's the bare bones of it. And we have not discussed Home Alone at any point on this podcast.
Oh.
And I did consider going with the OG, but I settled on the second one because I figured a lot of comparison talk would naturally arise anyway, so we'd end up talking about both. And I like discussing sequels here and what makes a good sequel. And this film is just so demented and I love it. But we'll get into that. Let's start how we always start. General thoughts, ratings out of 5. What did you all make of this violent comedy?
Yeah. I mean, I'll start by saying I'm not the biggest Home Alone fan in general. I've seen more of them than I care to, and I think many people care to.
That's one, right?
I've seen the first 3, and I've seen Home Sweet Home Alone, also known as privileged rich kid tortures homeless people, or no, they're not homeless. They're on the risk of being homeless. But I mean, I will say, even at their best, which is basically just the first one, I'm not really all that keen on them. But I will admit, in the first movie, there is kind of like a precocious charm to Kevin McCallister, and there's something there that I can see why people rewatch it every year. Home Alone 2, which I've seen the most of any of the films. I've seen this twice because I checked this out from the library when I was like 10, and I thought, the horror.
10-year-old critic, Zach.
It doesn't do it for me. I don't know what it is. I give this film a 2 out of 5, and I think where this film doesn't work in the way that the first one only kind of works for me, is this film just feels so mean-spirited and like angry and hurtful, where the first one feels like a goofy cartoon that happens to have live-action people in it. I think that's down to the edit, which was done by Raja Gosnell, later director of Scooby-Doo and the Smurfs. And also just the sound effects and the traps that Kevin sets are so much more realistically harmful. It's fun to watch people go through slapstick scenarios where, they slipped on the ice. It's not fun to watch people get legitimately hurt. And when I see Daniel Stern get hit in the face with a brick 4 times, and it's not accompanied by like a goofy bonk, it's accompanied by the sound of like a wet watermelon hitting the pavement, that's not fun for me. That just makes me think of a head trauma. Additionally, I think there's issues here in Macaulay Culkin being a little older. He's not as much older as I thought he was. But there's a big difference between like a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old. I'm just guessing on the ages there. But kids do grow up fast, particularly when they're going from like the single digits to the double digits. And whereas in the first movie, Kevin was this sort of precocious, misunderstood child in this horrible, horrible family where everyone seemed to hate him. In this second one, he's aged up just enough that he no longer registers as charming kid, and now he just feels like another sarcastic jerk in a family of sarcastic jerks. And that just permeates the whole film, and I don't feel sorry for him, and I don't feel charmed by him, and I just feel like I'm watching a brat break the law. So 2 out of 5. I'm not a big fan. I love Tim Curry in it, and even Rob Schneider is actually pretty funny. But the central core of the movie, I just don't really think works for me.
Interesting.
I can't find Scooby-Doo and the Smurfs on Letterboxd. I can find the first 2. He directed the first 2. Anyway, I really like those movies.
You like the Smurfs?
No, Scooby-Doo.
Oh,
Scooby-Doo.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Home Alone 2. He's alone again. Oh God. I don't.
Okay.
I don't agree with this premise. Okay. I don't agree with this premise. And I remember the Twin Towers, and I remember Trump being in the hotel.
Yep.
And that's what I remember. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny sometimes. I really like the Three Stooges, and I think the Three Stooges kind of knows how to do slapstick cartoon humor. Like, that's not a cartoon. And yes, I can acknowledge and appreciate that it's being obnoxious and ridiculous on purpose. And there is a level of creativity in that, but at the same time, I feel like it only goes so far. And I think that it really just, it's hard for me to accept the same formula again when it's just everything is ramped up like in an artificial way, I guess. With the exception of maybe the heartwarming Christmas themes are a little bit more like, I don't know, not subtle, but I guess they're just better written, honestly. They're better integrated. But at the same time, I do think that the movie revolves around the slapstick, and I feel like how much can you like be creative in that aspect without it like pretty much just eating the whole idea of Kevin being alone in the first place and the side kind of plot that goes with the pigeon lady and everything. And I just don't feel like it really works out well enough for me for it can just be like a meme and I can enjoy it. I feel like it kind of gets overplayed. Pretty much every scene I feel like is just it's constantly trying to charm you, and I kind of agree with Zach. He's not entirely the most charming boy to exist, and I just he's a very good child actor. I mean, that's I think that's obvious, but I don't know. I think the hotel kind of the first subplot was interesting. I mean, I read a Letterboxd review that said that they could watch an entire movie on the hotel workers, and I kind of agree with that. But at the same time, I mean, I'm like, why did they leave him again? And I just get mad. And I'm like, you could have just not done that. And this is like pre-9/11 boarding where it's like, all right, we'll let the kid go on and it'll be all right.
As long as he gets on a plane.
Take your box cutters, you're going to be fine. And this is what happens, okay? This Kevin gets lost and he's having a great time. And they find the robbers break out of jail somehow, and they're smart enough to get out of prison, but they can't kill his kid. And I had to rewatch that Family Guy gag where the competent robbers just walk in and they're like, oh, there's a ice on the stairs. I guess we shouldn't go down there. Oh, watch out for the two toy cars. And I forget what he says, but they just shoot the kid and he falls. And then like, yeah.
Well, it's been a long time since I've seen the first one. Are there as many overt references to Joe Pesci wanting to shoot Kevin McCallister? Because he says that so many times in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to shoot you, kid.
Yeah. Especially by the end. Oh my gosh.
John Williams.
Yeah.
It's pretty much Harry Potter. I'm pretty much watching Harry Potter. And
but this was before.
I know, precursor.
Same director too, actually, or at least of the first two movies.
Oh yeah, literally.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and people are like, this should be more serious. When they're watching Harry Potter. Or, now I feel like this should be more serious. I mean, he's attempted murder, multiple counts of battery and assault, and I'm just like, man,
it's self-defense.
I think you could call it entrapment in this. Well, not entrapment. You could call it like deliberate in this film. He didn't need to lure those men back to his house of horrors.
It's it's going to be a long court
Yeah.
court case, okay? It's going to be a really long court case, and it's going to get backed up in the New York municipalities. But anyway, 3 out of 5, okay? I am a very subtle simp for John Hughes for very certain reasons, and
Yes.
this movie is not one of them, unfortunately. So.
My goodness. I'm about to fall into the trap that Zach has outlined for us in previous episodes, where when we have an episode where we talk about a comedy, it's difficult to have a fully formed discussion around it, because a lot of times what we say amounts to, I think this is funny, and I don't think this is funny, and that's just kind of that. And I think this is hilarious. I love pretty much every second. And the whole, like, the brick bit when he, like, basically effectively murders Marv, or would if it were real.
Mm-hmm.
I find that hilarious. I just, when he's, like, to the point of, like, verbal incomprehension, I'm like dying of laughter. And I'm like, yes, give him permanent brain damage. This is great. And I think part of that is this was like a childhood classic for me, a regular that I would watch with my brother and my family many times. But it's been several years since the last time I saw this, so I wasn't sure if that would hold up, if the laughs would still come, especially watching it alone in a room with headphones on. And I laughed quite a few times. But all the same, I think what I like the most about this is not the ratcheted up gags at the end, the like 30-minute montage of pure violence, but the hotel stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I love Tim Curry. I love the device of the recorder thingy that he uses from the beginning of the film is cleverly integrated and makes for some fun situations.
Which was apparently made as a cross-marketing gimmick with the movie. Apparently they made that for the film and then sold it as a toy in advertising for the film.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good
That
for them.
stonks right there.
Yeah. That totally would have worked on me in 92. And by the way, Zach, this was released in 92 and Culkin was born in 80. So assuming that this was filmed like the year before it was released, 9 and 11 for his ages.
Oh, wow. I hit it bang on the head. Wow. Okay.
Good job. But yeah, I love Tim Curry. I love the hotel stuff. I love the parody of the gangster movie that he watches in the hotel room. And yeah, I said this in my Letterboxd review. I don't really know how to criticize something like Home Alone 2 Lost in New York beyond explaining how entertaining I find it. And I find it immensely entertaining. And maybe that's colored by nostalgia. And it probably doesn't deserve a 4.5, but I gave it 1 because I had so much fun. And yeah.
I do think you brought something interesting up in your Letterboxd review, though, Christian, which isn't even a point on the film. At the beginning, I feel like it's a joke. You mentioned Die Hard 2. And
Yeah.
a big problem that people point out with the Die Hard films is that each Die Hard film progressively dies harder by putting John McClane in a bigger location in a way that kind of sabotages the premise, because in that first Die Hard film, he's stuck in a single building, and he can't get out of that building, and that adds to the tension. So when you do Die Hard in an airport, and then Die Hard in New York, and then Die Hard on the East Coast, and then Die Hard in Russia, you're lessening that tension because he has more places to go. In a similar way in this one, I at least found it frustrating. We're kind of circling back to that how does this work, boohoo, not funny point. But I do feel like putting Kevin kind of in a bigger location in this one sort of does sabotage the premise, at least for me. And they even kind of point it out in the movie, where in the first film, he's home alone. So he can stay in his house, and people know that the McCallisters are going to be out. So there's a decent idea that people are unlikely to stop by. People are unlikely necessarily to know that he's there, or if they do recognize, they might not tell other people. You have that confined location to make that work. In all of New York, not one person is going to go, okay, where are your parents? Oh, okay, can you, like, all right, I want you to stay here until your dad gets here. Like, nobody does that throughout the entire movie. And
Well, Tim Curry tries to.
But then Tim Curry is cast as the villain and gets slapped by his mom because he tried to. So, it seems silly to say that Home Alone 2 Lost in New York strains credulity, but I do think that it kind of does in a way that weakens the premise, at least for me.
Mm. I wanted to talk about the gags too, because I think, and I haven't watched the first one recently, so I can't make a direct comparison, but these gags are, some of them just totally ignore the laws of physics.
The laws of anything. The laws. All of the laws.
I want to ask you, sorry, Mitchell. No, you go ahead, then I'll.
Okay, I was going to say castle doctrine is a part of self-defense cases, okay? And if he's not at his house, he's not defending anything except his life.
That's actually a decent point.
But you can't really prove that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we brought this up earlier. I don't think that applies when you lead these men to somewhere directly for the purpose of harming them.
Killing them multiple times.
I think that surpasses any crime that they have committed, especially if it wasn't against you. Those two men robbed a toy store. Let me murder them.
Yeah.
But it's so fun, guys.
It's fun to talk about the Home Alone movies for me, but while I'm actually watching them, they're not that funny.
I agree.
The stuff that I really laughed at in this was the Tim Curry stuff, which I'm realizing now, that whole setup is basically just Faulty Towers, which might not be a film we've seen, or a show we've seen in this group. Faulty Towers is a British show starring John Cleese. It's about the staff at a hotel, at a very fancy hotel, including the very upright, snooty front desk manager and his kind of lazy bellhop, and like it kind of fits a lot of those character beats. Which it's a design that works in this film too. So I'm not gonna throw any mud at them for ripping off Faulty Towers or anything like that. But
oh my gosh, I don't even remember what I was gonna say. I think I was gonna ask if there was a breaking point, like at which gag pushed it too far, because I mean, we start with the bricks. I
think the bricks probably. I mean, okay, I will say, like, I think you can totally achieve like this cartoon humor in a like contained setting where you're not totally convinced that that's going to be the plot of the movie already. I mean, you do have like sequel fatigue, I guess, when it comes to like expecting, like, what's going to happen, and that's fine, and you just want to see how bad it actually gets, and it's going to get worse, and it does, and that's kind of like, that's it. The Three Stooges, at least I keep referencing that just because, like, every episode, or even the movie in a lot of ways, but not I don't know how many movies there were, but not the one we're thinking of, the colored one. We're talking about the black and white ones. But anyway, in the TV shows, it's like they have a premise, they have a location, they have a setting. There's different characters, supporting characters.
Yeah.
And it's very simple premise usually, and they just, it's going to be slapstick. How creative can the slapstick get? And it has gotten creative over a TV show's length of time, or however long, and then the new thing happens, But Home Alone is Home Alone, and that's it, the entire time. And if you don't accept it, like, right in the beginning, and you're not enthralled by it, like the first go, you're never gonna be enthralled by it the rest of the time. And which is kind of even though John Hughes didn't direct this, it's a commonality in any movie that John Hughes is in. Basically,
yeah.
You have to really buy into that heart in the very beginning, or else you're not gonna buy into it. It's just gonna be annoying.
That's true.
Yeah, the gags in this film that strain the bounds of human anatomy don't bug me that much, because I'm willing to go, okay, perhaps Harry and Marv are, just Iron Men. They're Stalin-esque men of steel, and they can withstand anything. The ones that bug me are the ones that just flagrantly violate the laws of physics and the way that objects move in relation to each other, and make me go, come now. So the one for me in this film was, I think it's in the basement with Marv, and Kevin puts like floor polish or grease or something all over the floor.
Yeah.
And
it's like a slime
Marv
thing that he gets,
slips, and in the wide shot you see him falling straight down, and then you go to a close-up where apparently he has gone from falling straight down to sliding across the floor into the wall where he tips over a shelf. So apparently Marv hit the ground and immediately pivoted at a right angle to go a different direction because he slipped on the slime. He slipped on the flubber.
I was going to bring up
that one bugged me.
Well, what you don't know, Zach, is that this is actually in the MCU.
This is actually... Oh, okay.
This is canon, so everything is acceptable now.
Well, that's one more I don't have to visit on the Marvelous Cinema Tour then.
Exactly. Save yourself the time.
Oh my gosh. Okay, to avoid going in circles on the gags and the jokes, maybe we can talk about the performances. We've hit on Tim Curry a bit. Mm-hmm. We've got Culkin as Kevin. We have Pesci and Stern as Harry and Marv. We have what's his face as Duncan.
Oh yeah.
What's his name?
Some classic Hollywood actor, I think.
Eddie Bracken.
Eddie Bracken, yes. And of course Tim Curry as the concierge. We've got Rob Schneider as Bellman. Wow, they really don't even give those names. Wow.
Wait, he has a name. His name is like Edith or it's like there's like an E sound at the beginning. I think he calls him something. Tim Curry calls Rob Schneider something throughout the movie.
Yeah, I thought so too. I completely forget what it is. But and then we have Pigeon Lady. Pigeon Lady. We got to talk about Pigeon Lady too. I don't know. Pick somebody and talk about them.
I just want to talk about Tim Curry again cuz he's so good in this movie. There's the bit where Kevin turns on the gangster movie to like stop them. And I think it's when the movie says like, "You've been smooching with everybody. I saw you smooching with my brother last night." And he makes this sort of like, Tim Curry makes this sort of like disaffected, disbelieving like like sound, and then he makes a facial expression that looks like he has been smooching with everybody, but he doesn't really want to admit it. And that's like not something that's in the script at all. It's just something that he thought like, well, you know, maybe I am. So it's great. And even in that scene, the way that Rob Schneider looks at him, where he's just kind of looking at him, and every new beat, he's just kind of, oh man, he's shaking his head like, I don't know, like he's just learned that his dad stole from the bank or something. It's great. That's like, I think that's the best scene in the movie. Yeah. And even when they jump out into the corridor and they're crawling along, there's an insane guest with a gun. Yeah, Tim Curry is the all-star in this movie. I would watch an entire series that was just the Plaza Hotel shenanigans. Yeah, great performances all around. And since you seemed enthusiastic about the Bird Lady, she's totally fine. But again, I do think it's one of those things where I get why Kevin was freaked out by the shovel guy in the first film, because Buzz had told him this story about, I think he tells him a story about how he's like a serial murderer or something.
Yeah.
And he's I mean, Roberts Blossom is kind of a creepy looking man. I mean, he played the guy who owns the car in Christine for a reason, because he just is like an awkward, gangly looking person. And I would understand like a 9-year-old being frightened by him. But 11-year-old Kevin is just afraid of this woman who feeds birds in the park. Like, there's no story to it for him to be afraid of. It's just a woman who likes, a pretty sweet looking old woman who just likes to feed birds. And, oh, she's hideous. Like, that never worked for me. Even at 10, I was like, why is he afraid of this woman?
I learned in my ethics class, my hospitality class, it's about hospitality, that if you have a homeless person, you have to decide ahead of time whether or not you're going to help them, okay? And if you're not going to give them anything, you should at least give them a prayer, okay?
You learned this in a college class?
Yes, so he should at least have given her a prayer, okay? Don't be scared of people that are less off than you, because what would have Jesus done? Okay.
Well,
that's what I learned in my class.
He gave her a turtle dove. So she's still homeless, but she has a Christmas ornament.
There you go. What's more important than food, water, and shelter?
A bird.
Than the teachings of Christ.
Okay. A ceramic turtle dove.
Yes. And I do think she was a good actress, though. I mean, okay, like the actual conversation itself was not far-fetched, and I think that it was teaching like a good enough lesson where it didn't seem like it was overdone, or it was compelling enough. They're both compelling enough characters in their own rights, and I think just Kevin has so much charisma, and even with all that charisma and how much he actually acts like he knows about life and everything, and even though it did seem like he was getting to the point where he was going to teach her something, he still learned a lot anyway. And I can appreciate that, like, story beat, even though, Kevin's trying to kill people the entire time. I mean, I feel like his that Christmas kind of thing, even Kevin can learn something, is like something you should get on a t-shirt. And I think most people are going to, unless Zach puts it on, I think most people are going to know that it's Kevin from Home Alone. Not Kevin in real life. But anyway, I think that Pesci and Stern, I think that they have a very clear-cut, like, stereotype, the dumb guy and the not so dumb guy, but they're still very dumb. And I think they work pretty well as antagonists and as punching bags. And I mean, I think they work well in the confines of the movie, and I mean, they really give you what you're going to expect, and I don't think there's any problem with that necessarily. Besides what I had already mentioned, I think that they're pretty acceptable, like, antagonists. The real antagonist, though, is bad morals and not accepting the Christmas spirit in your heart. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah.
Oh my
I did want to mention, since we're kind of talking about the park and the bird lady, I think as a film, that, like, in terms of filmmaking, this is pretty unremarkable. I find that with a lot of Chris Columbus movies. A lot of his filmmaking is pretty, like, we'll get a wide shot, a medium, and a close-up, and that's all we need to see. But there are some very neat shots in the park. There's one wide shot where you start on, like, a statue, and it cranes up just as Kevin is, like, running along a trail in the background, and it stops right where the statue is, like, pointing to him with the forced perspective, and that's very neat. There's some very nice, like, crane shots and dolly shots in the park. At the end, when all the birds sweep down on Harry and Marv, and kind of the camera follows them to Harry's screaming face. Some neat filmmaking in the park, because it was probably where they could get all the big equipment, because you can't park a film crane in a Plaza Hotel.
Yeah. I'll echo most of what Zach said about Pigeon Lady, because as far as the all the other copy and pasted elements from the first film are just kind of, as I say in my review, ratcheted up to 12, like the violent gags. Mm-hmm. But you can't really do that as much, or at least they didn't here with the scary person who has a heart of gold or whatever. So there were parts in their conversation. I think it makes sense that she's speaking in an open and simplistic way because she's talking to this child. Mm-hmm. But then she says something like, "Oh, I haven't spoken to someone in 2 years." And it's like, geez, well, you're doing a pretty good job if this is your first conversation in 2 years. And I also just want to shout out Catherine O'Hara, who just has to do the exact same thing a second time. Mm-hmm. And, that's hard. But I think her moment with the police officer where she's like, what would you do if you were me? And there's some, like, genuine mom moments in there, like, Kevin's strong. You wouldn't. I would be dead in an alley, but not my Kevin.
Oh, that stuff makes me roll my eyes. But
I would have already started rolling up the window.
Whatever.
Anyway,
I will say the bird lady conversation is like 50-50 for me. And it goes back and forth because half the time it works, but I swear she says, like, the exact line, "I'm just afraid I'll get my heart broken again," like 3 times in that scene. It just keeps going round in circles. I'm like, okay, end the scene. We can be done now.
It's like Socratic, that's how Socrates talks. He's like, well, if you do this, if you break your heart again, then this will happen. Mm-hmm. But if this happens, what if my heart breaks? Well, if your heart breaks, you'll still have a heart. But if I still have a heart.
Home Alone 2 is a perfect model for a Socratic seminar, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, there's one other criticism I'll levy on this, which is it's a clean 17 minutes longer than Home Alone 1, and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
I think the most obvious thing to cut is probably the retread of the Buzz Kevin conflict, like the choir concert shenanigans.
I forgot.
That isn't that funny until Piano Lady falls on her head.
That's true, actually.
But then we get this long scene where he's like fake apologizing, and then at the end he like does the whole thing where he gives Kevin the first gift or whatever. Like if you cut like all of that out, you probably save like 8 to 10 minutes, and it doesn't really hurt the movie that much. But I also want to shout out Gary Bamman, who plays Uncle Frank. I would say my favorite scene is still probably the Tim Curry scene we keep talking about. But a very, very close second is when Uncle Frank is showering and singing his song very loudly and proudly, and Kevin walks in on him and gets shouted at, and then that voice sample serves as a sample for another excellent Tim Curry scene that comes later. My goodness. I don't really think this deserves a 4.5.
Oh, you don't, do you?
You can't change it now.
No, I'm not going to. And I think I
Yeah.
was emboldened because on Letterboxd they have lists of like ex-directors' favorite films, like Edgar Wright's or whoever's. And I'm pretty sure I saw Home Alone 2 on the Safdie brothers list. Not Home Alone 1, just Home Alone 2. And I think it keys into what Mitchell said earlier, which is you have to buy in early on, and if you don't, you're not going to later. And if you do buy in, as such as I, and the stuff you're buying into gets cranked up 2 more notches, perhaps you will like Home Alone 2 better than Home Alone, like me, even though that's perhaps crazy. Well, closing thoughts? I don't know. I don't have much left to say.
No, I think I've said my fill too. Yeah, I like John Hughes' skeletons. It happens in more than a few of his films where people get really scared or electrocuted, and you see their literal skeleton with his hair. Still, it happens in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles when they nearly hit the truck, and it happens in this one when Marv gets electrocuted by a sink.
That's Hughes' production right there.
Yes, that's the John Hughes signature. Hitchcock has bomb theory. John Hughes has appearing skeletons.
Yeah, I don't know, man. He's alone. The third one, how alone can you possibly get?
Oh, the third one is wild.
It's not him in the
I
third
heard.
one. Yeah.
I know, that's what I'm saying. He's so alone, he's not even there.
He has a
The
parrot.
third one is apparently still written by John Hughes,
No.
which just makes it even crazier.
It is,
'cause it's
yeah.
just insane.
I'm going to be honest. From what I remember, from a trip to Norway, watching it on the hotel when I was a child, don't hate the third one. I think I might even like it a
don't
little
either.
more than this. Yeah.
Roger Ebert says it's the best one.
Oh my gosh. Don't
So-
even tempt me, guys. Don't even
He said
tempt me.
there's no way they're gonna make a Home Alone 3, and then he linked the Home Alone 3 review from his second one and said, "Man, man, I don't know how this happened." But yeah, for my final thoughts, I think that Home Alone 2 is what it is, and I think if you like him being alone, then you will like this. No, I mean it's like pinnacle of slapstick humor, honestly. I will say there really is some good creative gags in here that would kill people in real life, but if you like laughing at that and you enjoy that premise, and robbing toy stores, you sick people,
Have we got a film for you?
we got a film for you. And I mean, yeah, I think yeah, Kevin's funny. That's it.
All right.
You guys are making me like seriously question my moral fiber for enjoying this as much as I do.
And you should be ashamed, Christian.
This is I don't know. I still love it. The last thing I'll say is John Williams like actually composed like really solid themes for this, like the rushing to get to the airport music and the sentimental theme for Pigeon Lady, and the recycled theme from the first one, and it's just very funny to me because these movies don't need that compositional prowess, and it's just there, and it just feels vaguely out of place, but it's there and it's fun. So good job, John Williams, for taking this for some reason. Ugh. Okay, segment time?
I guess so, yeah. Is it, we can review. Okay, so this is a fresh off the presses weekend review for me. I just watched Glass Onion, the sequel to Knives Out, which dropped on Netflix today when we're recording this. And I will say that I like the original Knives Out better. I think that there's a lot of very, very current references in Glass Onion, just for the setting and the time that it takes place in, that I think are going to make it date a little bit worse than the first one. Because Knives Out is, I mean, there's smartphones and whatnot, but it's more or less just sort of like a movie set in the modern age. Glass Onion, because of elements of its plot, trying to be vague because it is a mystery, is very much set in this current moment. Maybe not even this current moment. A couple months ago's current moment. And I also think the ending is trying to be different from the first Knives Out, and it's trying to make like a very complex point about like justice and the legal system and responsibility and vengeance. And I on paper it works. Like there's nothing I can pinpoint as why it doesn't make sense, but in terms of tone, it feels kind of clumsy and doesn't really feel like the emotional resolution I think it wants to be. I would certainly recommend checking it out. I would recommend checking it out in the same way I would recommend checking out like a bunch of episodes of Agatha Christie's Poirot or something like that, because at this point Benoit Blanc is essentially that kind of character. He's going to go on different kinds of detective mysteries with different cast of characters, and there'll probably be different tones and settings every time. This one, I think, would maybe just kind of be that one that people are like, oh, you remember that one with like the pandemic and he played like Among Us at some point? Like it's that kind of episode. It's like it's like episode 2 of like a 10-part series where people are like, oh yeah, that one's okay. Like in the long run when they're talking about it in hindsight. So totally fine. I recommend people forge their own opinions on it. It has a great cast. Ed Norton is great in it. There's some very fun cameos. Everybody's good. I just think the plot maybe doesn't resonate as much for me as the first one did. Me being more a fan of classic mystery novels that the first one was alluding to, rather than maybe the more current kind of mystery this one's referencing. 3 out of 5.
Christian, what are you going to talk about? Huh?
Do you want to talk about the same thing?
I think we're going to talk about the same thing about my magical journey to the planet of Pandora.
Great. I don't need to download another image.
Yeah. I also watched the first Avatar a couple days ago, and I don't know how I keep going back to that same planet. I don't know how it keeps happening. The voice of Sigourney Weaver from Finding Dory, because everyone remembers her from that, probably. Yeah, man, Avatar 2. James Cameron does a James Cameron and presents James Cameron movie as the director of Avatar 2. The Way of Water. And the water is the way. The water is the way is what I found out. And, yeah. Family. Dom Toretto family. That's also what I learned. And it looks really good. It looks really good. It looks like, man, what does it look like? Nothing. It looks like nothing. I have never seen anything that good. No, it's a compliment. It's a compliment. I'm saying I've never seen anything that looks this good, because it actually does look fantastic. And that's it. What were we going to say, Christian?
Okay. Lots of stirring endorsements this episode.
I think you've covered most of the positives.
Okay, I want to clarify. Mitchell's positives, which are apparently all the positives of the film, were that it looked like nothing. James Cameron did a James Cameron thing, and water was the way. Oh, and family.
Yeah, that's it. There's
I mean, yeah.
So apparently we've summed up the entire film.
it basically does retread the plot of the first one
completely. Yeah.
It literally recycles the same villain. Okay, I'm sorry, but it does. And yeah, I mean, it's got a functional plot. It's not like it's like I totally deny its existence or that it's so ridiculous that I just want to turn it off. It's not nearly that bad. I mean, it is James Cameron. He has made some pretty solid, he's written some pretty solid things, but I just don't think. I mean, it really is all about the visuals. I mean, it's hard to avoid the number of shots that are in this just to see how good the effects are. And, I mean, that's really, and there's also a story, is what you find out. There is a story in this movie. And it's not that bad, I guess. I mean, it's a bad man seeks revenge against man who now has family. And they have to find him. And they do. And it's up to you to decide who wins, I guess, if you want to figure out. And maybe there's a loss in there. Maybe there isn't. Maybe it's just, what it is. 3 hours. I was in Pandora for 3 hours. And I liked it. I did like it a lot. And I don't know. Christian, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I'll say, I just want to double down on the whole visual effects thing. Like the amount of labor that was put into this by the visual effects artist is incomprehensible to me.
Yeah.
And it truly looks like nothing else, to the point that you question, like I question the human faces before I question the Pandorans, because they're the ones that feel more out of place, if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah.
And it can be really unnerving, and I can see why that would put off a lot of people just by virtue of how totally different it is. And I'll also shout out Sigourney Weaver, because she plays like a teenage Pandoran in this, and it kind of works in an amazing way. And I have difficulty latching onto these characters. I still do. And I think she was probably the most interesting of the kids, of which there are like 4, and then a few more that aren't Sully's kids. But and then Neytiri is sidelined kind of, which was weird to me, because I think Saldana is the best at performing through all of the dots that they put on her face.
Yeah, actually.
But yeah, it's just, there's just something missing. There's a disconnect there, and it's there. And, people on Letterboxd and cinephiles like myself who are rooting for Cameron are going to give him the credit he deserves, and they're going to largely ignore that. But there's just a weirdness to the Avatar stuff. There just is. I can't imagine like a 9-year-old kid asking for a Jake Sully action figure instead of like a Spider-Man or Darth Vader or Batman or whatever. Like there's just not the same level of broad appeal. And you can tell that Cameron directed Titanic because it's kind of soap opera-y, and the dialogue does fall flat. And the immersion is almost like, I feel like I was Stockholm syndromed into liking this movie, kind of, because it's like you were in Pandora for 3 hours, and when you walk out of that theater, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm in the real world again. And it's just bizarre.
It's a compliment too, but
yes.
I think that I don't want to go too much over time, but I think it's like it really does. This is also another buy-in thing. I mean, if it's a really believable world. I like the world. It has all the parts to like a universe that could exist. I could read a wiki page on this and have a pretty solid description of everything. And I think that's really cool. I mean, I don't think it's an attempt at a world being built. I think there really is a Pandora. I think that's like an actual, I'm not saying that's an actual planet in real life, but I am saying that James Cameron has convinced me that I am the sky person. And but is that enough to carry like a story within that world? Definitely not.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time not thinking about like Star Wars watching this, and I think that like just having Avatar the first one being very similar to A New Hope in the way that the world was built and everything, and then they're kind of just shoving A New Hope 2 in your face, basically, and saying, look at this, it looks even better now. And, like, there's water and there's torches and stuff, and we're going to have this character have a fire because it looks cool, and we're going to have water and underwater scenes because we're going to abuse every single actor we have here and break underwater breathing records. Yeah. And I just think that's like, that it pays off. Like, it looks amazing, but man, it's hard to not get past that. I've seen this 3 million times, and that's it. And I think it was a great theater experience. It was great to see it in theaters, but I mean, I really think you should, like, think about how much you actually cared about the first one. I think is probably what's going to gauge if you actually want to go back into this place again, only with, like, massively great graphics. And I don't know. Yeah. They should just remaster the first one, I guess.
Yeah. The underwater photography is truly astounding. But I don't think this is going to change anyone's mind. If you liked the first one, you're going to like this.
Yeah.
And if you didn't like the first one, you're probably still not going to like this. And more than the fact that it's a retread, I'm, spoiler alert, more frustrated by the fact that we're primed for yet another retread based on the way that this one ended.
And another.
It's just going to keep happening. And I'm going to keep seeing it like a sucker. So there's that.
Yeah. I mean, I have not seen The Way of Water. I probably won't see The Way of Water. But based upon conversations I've had with people about it and just, observing James Cameron's career, I think the approach he used to take to films was, okay, what's a story that I can work a lot of really groundbreaking special effects into? Let me think of the story. And about Titanic onward, the approach seems to have been less, what's the story I can work effects into? And more, what's an effect I can do?
Yeah.
Okay, what's a story I can hang that on? Because Titanic was more expensive to make than it would have been if they had actually just rebuilt the entire Titanic. That's a legitimate fact. They offered to build him the Titanic to shoot that movie, and he said, how many times can I sink it? And after they said 1, he said no. And so, and it's just a very simple love story other than that. Avatar is basically just Dances with Wolves, and it sounds like this one's basically just Dances with Wolves again, but I can build an ocean. Look at me build an ocean. And I don't know if I'm interested in seeing that, but
You really gotta come home with not the special effects. No CGI. Make a real nuclear bomb go off.
Oh boy.
Real atomic bomb go off.
Oh my God.
That's Nolan's like, that's where the money is.
Yeah.
That's where
a
third time.
I think they're lying about that, though. I think they're using marketing speak to twist what they actually did. I kind
of hope so.
I don't believe Christopher Nolan actually set off a nuclear bomb.
No. I think he recreated it.
Okay.
So I think he probably made a very large explosion that in some way resembles an atomic bomb. I think that's probably what happened. But that's
just
still
like this episode.
He actually went to New Mexico and did it. You know what I mean? Like, that's...
Oh, God.
Anyway.
Yep.
Oppenheimer.
All right.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It sounds like it's time for me to embark upon the marvelous cinema tour. Cue the kazoo. Yeah, so today we're talking about Captain Marvel, or as I like to call it, Shazam. But yes, we're talking about Captain Marvel, which is, up to this point, other than Doctor Strange, it is the only film in the MCU so far that I had not seen before watching it for this. And it's the first one that I didn't see because I just wasn't interested. I was kind of interested in seeing Doctor Strange, but I never got around to seeing it. Captain Marvel, I looked at all the advertising, I looked at the films that had come before it, and I looked deep within myself at my own feelings on the MCU, and I went,
I'm not a stan.
Nah, I think I can do without that. And because of that, I will say that I'm kind of surprised at what I found, because I hadn't seen it. the only thing I knew about this film was based upon everything I knew about this film, and everything I thought about this film was based on the uproar, which, watching this movie, I think was a little miscalculated. I think Brie Larson's white dude comments are certainly tipping the needle too far the other way, but I definitely think that you could say a lot of the intense hatred of this film is maybe down to people putting their critical priorities in the wrong place. I don't think this is a very good movie, but I don't think it's bad because woman and Marvel force woman on my superhero franchise. I think it's bad because Carol as a character is very inconsistent, but that would be the case if she were a male character as well. It's just an inconsistently written character that has to have all this power, and it's very difficult to make a character as powerful as that in any way human or flawed. So you have to kind of find excuses to do that within the context of individual scenes, which is difficult to do. And additionally, I think, I don't know, everything in the second half kind of lost me. I didn't hate the setup of this film. I don't, because at the beginning when she's with her Kree crack squad and they go to individual planets and like go on small scale missions in sound stages filled with fog, and assassinate people and things like that, I thought that was kind of intriguing. It felt a little bit like Space Marvel Mission Impossible or something like that. But the second she falls into that Blockbuster video, it was losing me.
I'm just a girl.
Oh, yeah, that too. I'm not going to say I hated it, because there are things in this that I liked. I like how it's much smaller scale than a lot of the other movies that the MCU has been putting out at this point. I love that Nick Fury finds his way out of a locked office by using a little piece of Scotch tape to get a thumbprint. Like, I love seeing like little bits of ingenuity like that. Of course, the film then scuppers that when she just shoots through a door lock like in the next scene. But I see the potential in those moments. And I'll say that the directors seem to have been allowed to actually direct this movie. This is maybe one of the most creatively lensed Marvel films in terms of its cinematography, since I can't remember the last one I watched that felt like it had this much control on the part of the directors. So very much kudos to them. But I think all the issues here are in the script and setting up for future films, and for me it was a 2 out of 5. I see why people dislike it. I don't think I disliked it as much as everybody else, but then again, I wasn't especially impressed by it either. It's a real like movie. Next up is Avengers Endgame. This is other than Spider-Man, Far From Home, and Spider-Man No Way Home. I think this is the last Marvel film that I have seen on the Marvelous Cinema Tour.
Wow.
I am going to keep going until I've caught up. So that means that if we go ahead with our plans for Season 4 as planned, I will probably catch up right before the end of that season. Somewhere around Quantumania. I hate that I know that. But this is the last one that I saw in the theater or tried to see with my family as a we should all watch this type event. And so, who knows? Maybe it'll hold up. Maybe I'll think it's long and boring and agree with myself from when it came out that it was the perfect movie for a plane because it's extremely long and it doesn't really matter what happens as long as you occasionally look at the screen every now and then. Who knows?
Come on, man.
We'll see. Tune in next time to find out.
I have a question about the mechanics of this moving forward. What are you going to do about the Disney Plus installments, like the miniseries and
What
the
will we do?
like the specials, like Werewolf by Night and the Guardians Holiday Special?
I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. Not a damn thing. They don't count, and so I'm not watching them.
That's a real man right there.
Had to ask. Well, when you don't know what's going on in the weird world, that'll be why.
Well, okay, I've heard people complain about the Disney Plus shows that they feel so ineffectual because it feels like they're trying not to leave people who just watch the movies out.
You just reminded me. I didn't finish She-Hulk.
You just reminded me She-Hulk was a thing that happened.
I cannot even believe that I didn't finish She-Hulk. Go ahead.
Yeah, I knew people that. I was gonna say I knew people that loved She-Hulk. I knew people who watched She-Hulk.
I did a little bit.
What I will say is, based upon what I know about She-Hulk,
now we're talking about She-Hulk.
Yeah, why not? This is an episode of Cookie Pocket that I'm not hosting. We can talk about whatever for as long as we want.
The train has gone off the rails.
From what I know about She-Hulk and what I have heard about the show and what I've heard people complain about the show because of, I don't think it's as off-brand as people have said it is. Because She-Hulk was like, not Daredevil, Deadpool before Deadpool. So the fact that the show really doesn't take itself or anything in it seriously, supposedly, I don't think would bug me. But it doesn't matter because I'm not watching it because I'm free in 14 episodes. So.
I thought he was going to say he's 14. Free and 14.
What's next? I don't know.
Mitchell, do you want to talk about Joe Pesci's hand cannon?
I don't even know. It was covered in too much varnish. I have no idea.
All right, moving on.
That's my excuse. Okay.
Oh my god. Okay. We have a rundown for you.
We do.
You folks, I'm sure you were just thirsting for 60 more seconds of Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. Well, we got them for you. Mitchell, are you ready to give us numbers?
Yeah, I already got a couple prepared in my head. I already know what goobers are going to do to me.
Okay, Zach, you're going to start us off
Okay.
in 3, 2, 1, go.
A limo and a pizza.
3 out of 5.
A needlessly excellent John Williams score.
3 out of 5.
Duncan's toy chest.
3 out of 5.
Seeing Uncle Frank naked and subsequently growing up to never feel like a real man.
4 out of 5.
Blunt force head trauma.
2 out of 5.
Getting your lousy, lying, low-down, four-flushing carcass out my door.
3 out of 5.
The Sticky Bandits.
2 out of 5.
Housekeeping.
2 out of 5.
I love you.
2 out of 5.
Clarifying that Kevin's name starts with a K.
3 out of 5.
Rubber sheets.
3 out of 5.
Herbert Hoover, the vacuum guy.
4 out of 5.
The Talk Boy.
3 out of 5.
Cliff.
3 out of 5.
Sponsor, Coca-Cola.
3 out of 5.
Sponsor, American Airlines.
2 out of 5.
Sponsor, Tiger Toys.
2 out of 5.
Trump cameo.
3 out of 5.
I believe ya, but my Tommy gun don't.
4 out of 5.
1 second, Tim Curry,
2 out
time!
of 5. Oh.
Oh.
I didn't even mean to say that one. But it's enshrined. It's
It is.
enshrined now.
That's the nature of the rundown.
Wait until
There we
Avatar
go.
3 comes out. Then I'll let you know.
This family is still our fortress.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh my gosh.
That's it. Christian
Okay.
summarized the movie.
Well, next time on what I'll christen the holiday catastrophe, we'll be talking about something that I guarantee almost none of our listeners have even heard of.
Yay.
But that's par for the course when it's my turn to
Form.
host.
Yay.
We are going to be we're going to be discussing The Signalman from 1976. This is the 6th entry in the BBC series A Ghost Story for Christmas, which started in 1971. So every year they would do a half-hour short film, classic ghost story on Christmas Eve. And we're going to watch one and tell you all what we think about it. So stay tuned for The Signalman.
Wow. Yeah. We're back. It's the holidays, and you know, because we're back. And
Zach made a teaser.
Zach made a teaser.
Yeah.
That's
did.
going to do it for us. This has been Cookie Pocket, yet another holiday special. You're welcome, and I'm sorry.
Bye.